Hello, and welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast, where we learn about the ocean, share sea stories, and explore ocean careers. I'm your host, Kara Muzia. Let's dive into today's episode. This episode is brought to you by you. Thank you to those of you who have become patrons of the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast. For less than the cost of a dive tank refill, or a cup of coffee, you can help keep the podcast episodes coming. There's also some fun bonuses for patrons, so be sure to check those out at patreon.com/marinebio.life. That's patreon.com/marinebio.life. Hello, mermaids, pirates, ocean lovers, and land lubbers. Welcome to today's show. Did you hear about the lazy oyster? It wouldn't move a muscle. What do you call an oyster party? A celebration. My guest today is Gardner Douglas, the Oyster Ninja. With his own mobile rawbar business and podcast, Gardner has garnered some amazing experiences around oysters, including shucking for the President of the United States. What I love about today's episode, besides Gardner's perfect radio voice, was his passion for his work with oysters. It really shows during our conversation today, which encompasses everything from what oyster shucking is, to farms and restaurants, to oyster recycling and entrepreneurship. Gardner offers some really excellent insight, and it's a really fun conversation. Please enjoy. Gardner, the Oyster Ninja, welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast. I am excited to chat with you today.
I'm excited to be here. I get to talk to other people who actually know what I'm talking about.
I love it. So how did you get this title, Oyster Ninja? I love it.
So the Oyster Ninja came in when I started my podcast, actually. So I didn't want to call it SS Shucking, which is my mobile raw bar. I was like, well, that doesn't sound appealing. And so I was just shooting, ideas back and forth with my mentor at the time. He's still like a mentor, Kim Blanchard. He has a bunch of podcasts. But we were just going back and forth. And he's like, dude, the Oyster Ninja. So after that, we just started going, back and forth with, like a logo. And here we are, Oyster Ninja.
I love it. It's such a fun, creative name, and it definitely sticks in your head. So before you became Oyster Ninja and started your own podcast, how did you even get into oysters?
So my dad actually is a professional oyster shucker also. He competed, tons and tons over the years. But he didn't. All right. So the difficult story is I didn't actually meet my dad until like my early 20s. But I'm talking about like literally soon as we got together, it was like we had been together, all those years. It was like, it's crazy how genetics and genes actually works because we are the same person. So he has that hustle and grind in him. I have it in me. Obviously get it from his side. Yeah, so he taught me how to shuck oysters, and it was just a way to make, extra money.
Yeah.
And I just kind of got the bug for it, honestly. I got the bug of connecting with people while I'm shucking. So we would do like these oyster and bull roasts where firehouses would hire us to come shuck oysters, and they would do like the other foods and sides. And I was like, man, I get to shuck oysters. And at that time, I was just drinking and having a good time. Get to drink and laugh with people. And it's a party around us. I was like, man, I'm hooked. And the money was pretty good at the time, too. So I was hooked.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oysters, I feel like, have their own culture behind them for sure. So your dad introduced you into the world of oysters. Was there like a special, there's different ways to shuck an oyster. Did your dad teach you like different techniques, or was he just like, F anything else you learn, like this is the best way to do it?
No, so I would say he showed me a couple ways.
Okay.
But over the years, and it really comes down to like shucking different oysters. So like he taught me on wild oysters that were coming up from like Louisiana. And Matter of fact, a specific memory is like he taught me how to shuck. So like just hen shucking from the back, and that was our go-to. That was my go-to because that's all I knew. But once I started really hustling oysters, like I would like shuck oysters and then put them in containers and then go out and sell them. Probably something I wasn't supposed to be doing at the time, but I didn't know. So charge it to the game. Um, but anyway, and again, I'm from the Eastern Shore of Virginia, so like the popular oyster, and even worldwide, is a Shucking oyster because it's nice and salty and briny.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought these Shucking oysters, and I was like, "Hey, I got these Shucking oysters. I'm going to shuck them." He's like, "No, you're not. Bring them to me." Just because it's a different type of beast, like, and
Okay.
these were like wild Shucking oysters, so they're really long. These are not the oysters you see in the raw bar. These oysters are like long and skinny and gnarly and sharp as I don't know what.
Mm.
And if I tried to hen shuck the way he taught me, it wouldn't have been nice. It wouldn't have been nice. So basically, with that type of oyster, what you want to do that I know now is you want to shuck it from the bill or the mouth of the oyster, and that
Okay.
helps get you a nice whole piece of meat when you shuck it.
Okay. So there's a couple things I want to break down. You're saying Chincoteague oysters, like Chincoteague Island?
Shucking Island, yep.
Okay. And then the oysters are sharp. If listeners have never encountered an oyster, they are very sharp little dudes. You would never suspect a shell could be so sharp. And so when you're handling them, most shuckers wear, I mean, I think all shuckers wear gloves to avoid being shucked themselves, basically. And shucking is just the act of getting the
Yep.
shell off of the oyster and getting to the meat part and detaching the meat from the shell itself. Is there any more art to the term shucking?
Well, no, I would say that's definitely shucking. A lot of times I say there's a difference between shucking and opening an oyster. Um,
Okay.
because anybody can open an oyster, but the art of shucking, I mean, it is what it sounds like. It's an art. Like you want to make sure that the meat is clean. You want to make sure that the meat is whole. So you don't want to cut the meat
Mm-hmm.
or just leave it raggedy looking at making it look like that it's already been chewed up. And I'm sure everybody's seen those pictures of oysters that just look all mangled. And just like any other food dish, you eat with your eyes. So
Mm-hmm.
it's my job to make those look so delicious you can't say no. And if you say no, then I got to do some other work to help you join the oyster club.
So with these Chincoteague oysters, you open from the back. So where the oysters actually hinge, there's a
Hmm.
muscle, and you usually break that and open the oyster that way. But with these Chincoteague, they're so long that you actually started at the other end, at the opening end. Is that what you were saying?
Exactly. So you want to, it's called bill shucking. So if you go from the back, it's called hen shucking. If you shuck from the front, it's called bill shucking or stabbing. And see,
That's
see
graphic.
what
Why do you call it bill shucking?
yeah. Um, so yeah, it's not like, the gangs in New York or anything. Um, so yeah, so you want to stab it, and it's a different type of knife you're going to use. So like with a hinge shuck, you want to use a nice strong knife,
Hmm.
because the hinges are strong. You want to you hope anyway, but we'll get to that later. That's just a difference in farm and wild. But with bill shucking, you want a thin, narrow knife with a nice little point on it because it's gonna go through the mouth, which is not as strong and also thin.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Different tools of the trade. I never noticed different types of oyster knives. Now I'm going to pay
And
attention.
a regular oyster opener, they use the same knife for everything. And then they complain about how hard oyster shucking is. But it would be the same for me if I use the wrong tool. If I use a screwdriver to, bang in a nail, it's gonna be hard, right?
Right.
So you got to use the right tool.
So when you like have a set of oysters in front of you or a
Hmm.
bushel of oysters in front of you, do you have like several knives that you can like pick up and work from? Or do you know, like, well, if I get oysters from a certain place, they're going to be like this, so I just need this one knife?
Hey, Kara here. I hear it all the time. How do I become a marine biologist? Or my niece wants to help the ocean. Where does she even start? I hear from students, yes, and also nurses, HR professionals, and other mid career folks who wonder if they could still make their dream of working with sea turtles or sharks come true, wondering if it's too late to answer the ocean's call. Here's what I've learned after 20 years in the field and hundreds of interviews. There's no straight line, no magic degree, and no gatekeeper. You create the path forward. If this sounds overwhelming and vague, I've created 2 tools to help you stop wondering what if and start moving forward with clarity and purpose. The first is my free guide, Be a Marine Biologist Without the Degree. Over 1,000 people have already downloaded this guide and taken their first step towards ocean impact. Inside, you'll find 7 concrete, doable actions to help you get started, whether you're just exploring or ready to make a change. Then there's the Ocean Blueprint. This is a 30-day self-paced course that helps you build your unique path into ocean science and conservation without quitting your job or going back to school. Inside the Ocean Blueprint, you'll get daily prompts to explore your interests, skills, and next steps, a structure that turns overwhelm into real momentum, and a bonus section to root your work into ocean connection. You don't have to wait for a degree, a perfect plan, or permission. Whether you're wading in or ready to take the deep dive, these tools are here to help you move from dreaming to doing. The ocean called. Are you ready to answer? Links in the show notes and on my website, karagracemuzia.com. I can't wait to see the waves you'll make.
So over the years, I've kind of, I can't say I've designed, but um, my dad taught me basically how to edit my oyster knife. So I start with a strong oyster knife base, right? Like my Dexter, with the ball handle. Dexter is a oyster knife brand, well, a knife brand, period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I like Dexter's. It's a couple of other ones that I like the Toadfish. But with the Dexter, it's easy to change the blade, not change the blade, but like file the blade down, so I can basically make the blade what I want it to be with the file. And that's
Mm.
basically just grinding on it, or I don't know the right term, but
Yeah, you
filing it.
file it down.
You're
Yeah.
filing the blade, and kind of, yeah, and you kind of make it what you want it to be. So I file the tip of it down, I round it out, and what comes out is this strong oyster knife, but it also can go through the bill of the oyster. And now I'm giving all my tips away, so I don't want to see my knife floating out there that I didn't make myself. Yeah, but it
That's
works.
pretty
So
funny.
really, you only need 1 or 2 knives.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So growing up on the eastern shore of Virginia, I mean, it's very watery. Did that pique your interest in oysters at all, or was it just strictly this like introduction with your dad in the oyster world?
Strictly with my dad, honestly. So, and honest, because like, so this is the importance, and I know we're getting off topic, but this is the importance of having, um and I'm not gonna limit, because there are some females who like the wildlife game, but for a young black boy, I can say I missed out by not having a father in the picture on some aspects. Now,
Mm.
my uncles did fall in that line, and help me out with other things, the birds and the bees and handling money and that type of thing. But they never really took me out to like go fishing,
Mm.
or just that one-on-one time. It was always like in a group setting if I did something with my uncles, or it was always like a hustle, like where they would take us to go make some money, because we didn't grow up rich or anything, so
Mm.
the extra money helped. But again, when I met my dad, so now he's going fishing. He's taking me. He has a daggone boat, so we're going on a boat and go fishing, and he's teaching me how to shuck oysters. He's teaching me about just things in life that are going to help me in the long run, and a guideline that's just going to set me apart, from other people.
Yeah.
My grandmother did a good job. Don't get me wrong, with as far as like raising me, but it's just something that a father puts a little oomph in,
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely
Yeah,
fulfill a unique role in and of themselves.
exactly. So to answer your question, I didn't do a lot of stuff on the water growing up.
Okay.
It wasn't until I met my dad where I started going fishing on the water and just found that water love. Oh my gosh, like I was so intoxicated. I just wanted to go fishing every day. And, if I caught something, great. If I didn't catch anything, who cares? Like I'm on the water, it was that type of vibe. And as far as shucking the oysters, like anytime he had an event, I wanted to be there with him. And that just really it's a drug. Oysters and wildlife is a drug. I like to overdose. That
Yeah.
doesn't sound right. But yeah. I like to indulge.
I like to indulge. I don't know if there's such thing as overdosing on nature and oysters. It's like what we're from, right?
Right, yeah. I'm the mud.
That's really cool. So, how did
Yeah.
you reconnect with your dad? I'm super curious.
It's just a weird story. I'll keep it. Basically, he had an idea that he might be my dad. Um, but it wasn't easy for him to come in the picture. During the early years. So once I became, like I said, in my early 20s, he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go down here and see if I see him, and introduce myself, and we'll go from there. So of course, who doesn't want a dad in his life? So he pulled up on me. At the time, I was working like crazy. I've always worked a lot and worked like just work. Like didn't really care. Um, but I was working at Tyson's chicken plant during the daytime, and during the nighttime, I was a shift manager at
Okay.
Pizza Hut, and that didn't last long because man, Tyson's put something on you. Um, but I did the shift manager for a few years. But anyway, he pulled up on me. It was the beginning of my shift. And he was like, "Hey, are you Gardner?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm Gardner." Okay, my name is Sam. Here's my number. Because I was kind of like brushing him off. Just a weird person pulling up on you, like asking your name. How you know my name? But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take your number. I can't talk right now, but I'll take your number and I'll call you later. So I called him later. He gave me the rundown of what's going down, what was going on. He thought he was my dad. He wanted to get tested. I was like, well, it's not gonna do any harm. Yeah, fine. Let's see. Let's see if you're my dad. And it's crazy. Like now that I think back, I don't remember like reaching out to my mom because my mom wasn't in the
Okay.
picture either. I don't remember like, hey, do you know this Sam, the shucking man? Do you know who this is? Like, I don't remember that. I might have said something to my grandmother, but I was real low key. Like, I don't really talk a
Yeah.
lot, you know what I mean?
No, I don't because
But
you have a podcast. But anyway.
anyway, no, seriously. And that's like the hidden gem. Like, I'm like truly, truly an introvert. Like, unless we're talking about oysters, you might get a couple words out of me, honestly. But we went and got the test, and boom, bam, he is your father.
Gardner, I am your father.
Yeah. And it's crazy because like even when before we got the test results, we went to what's the place called? I forget the Bonanza, I think it was, or some
Okay.
place to eat. Golden Corral, maybe. I don't know. But he was like, you know what? From everything you're telling me, you're doing positive things in life. At that time, I think I had stopped going to school because I don't know, money was more important in school. Um, I want to help you get back in school. I want to help you do this, 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 this. If you're my son, cool. If not, I'm still gonna be there to help you. So I was like, dang, this is a
Yeah.
good dude. Like, wow. And yeah, he was my dad, and like he bought me my first car, '79 Firebird, which I always wanted a old school car. But yeah, just a positive influence
Very
in my
cool.
life.
That is such a cool story.
Yeah, I'm tearing up.
I mean, that's such a big moment. That's amazing. And then he introduced you to the
Yeah,
world of oysters. So you mentioned you do
yes.
wild and farmed oysters. Do
Mm-hmm.
you like you still
Yeah.
do both? Do you prefer one over the other?
So majority of so what a lot of people don't know is if you go to a raw bar, majority of your oysters that you're going to be eating are going to be farm raised, and you kind of can recognize this by a farm raised oyster is pretty much they're like cookie
Mm-hmm.
cutter oysters. They're gonna look like the oyster
Mm-hmm.
right next to them. A wild oyster, because it's not being raised hands on, one may look this way, but the next will look totally different. So that's the biggest difference. The other big difference, no, I'm sorry. The other biggest difference is wild oysters reproduce. Farm raised oysters don't reproduce. So that's why now you can eat oysters all year round. First of all, okay, let's get that R muffin out of here. Um, and then the other, so farm raised oysters just eat all year round, and wild oysters
Okay.
reproduce.
So you mentioned a little bit
Yeah.
about the R month, and the whole thing is you don't eat oysters except in months ending in R. Where did that come from?
I don't know. I'm still looking for that sir and ma'am. I don't know why they start rumors like that. I don't know why they do things like that. That's not nice. But no, back in the old days, before we had refrigeration, you know, because oysters were reproducing during the summer months, they weren't
Mm-hmm.
really tasty, you know. So basically, an oyster gets good and fat for the winter months, and then when the water temperature starts to rise, they start spawning or releasing
Mm-hmm.
their eggs into the water. So it leaves a translucent body of an
Mm-hmm.
oyster, basically, that isn't really tasty, that isn't really meaty. It's just a casing of an
Mm-hmm.
oyster, basically. You can eat it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not really tasty. So again, they didn't have refrigeration to do a lot of shipping of oysters, so oysters were, dying fast, and how far is ice
Right.
gonna go? Um, but after refrigeration, boom, you can ship oysters
Right.
around the world,
And now we have farmed oysters.
and now we have farmed oysters.
So I worked for Oyster Recovery Partnership in Annapolis for a couple of
Hmm.
years, and I that was like my deep dive into oyster world, and I love them still. And I like to encourage people
Nice.
to eat farmed oysters from an ecosystem perspective because these are oysters that are being added to the water column. They provide an ecological service, and then they're being replaced once they're removed. And do you notice like a taste difference between them from the culinary aspect?
So there's no really big taste difference. The whole taste difference comes from the region of the
Mm.
oysters. So yeah, so if an oyster is farmed, in the Atlantic Ocean, it's going to be salty. But if it's farmed in the Rappahannock River, it's going to be sweet and
Mm-hmm.
mineral. So that's the whole taste, difference. As far as a wild oyster and a farm raised oyster, if they're in the same body of water, they're going to taste pretty daggone
Mm-hmm.
similar. The only difference is the way that farm raised oyster is formed. So the farmer might raise it to have a deep
Mm-hmm.
shell, which is going to be a plumper type of meat. So that might give it, a difference when it hits the tongue compared to the wild oyster that's just doing its own thing.
Right.
But that's going to be the biggest difference as far as like, flavor and profile.
Yeah. How do you make an oyster deeper?
So basically when oyster farmers are doing their thing, out on the water, they have this thing called a tumbler.
Mm-hmm.
And this tumbler is just this big metal cage, circular or spherical, cylindrical, that just goes round and round and round. So you throw your oysters in there, and basically what it does is when it tumbles around, it's knocking off pieces of the bill, the front of the oyster, the mouth of the
Mm-hmm.
oyster. So now that oyster isn't growing out because the mouth is, getting chipped
Mm-hmm.
off, but the oyster cell needs to grow. So now the oyster grows
Mm-hmm.
down, instead of outwards. Does that make sense? Am I painting a
Yep,
picture?
painting a very, very clear
Okay.
picture. That makes total
Yeah.
sense. And that's also how they're kind of all the same size.
Exactly. Yeah, that cookie cutter.
Cookie cutter. So when you are setting up an event, do you prefer the cookie cutter, they're all the same, or do you like the different shapes and sizes wild?
You know, I should be ashamed of myself, but it all depends on profit margin.
Spoken like a
No, that's
businessman
not only
and an
it.
entrepreneur.
Right. No, but no, definitely I like to make my day easy. So if I know that this wild oyster is gonna, because there are some, wild oysters you still can buy. If I know the wild oyster is going to be a good quality oyster,
Mhm.
I'll get a wild oyster. It's all about quality to me. The thing that sets my mobile raw bar apart from other even raw bars, period, like restaurants, it's just the quality of oyster that I bring. I work real close with my distributor and also other oyster farmers. So like sometimes I'll get my oysters directly from oyster
Mhm.
farmers, but when I don't, I get them from a seafood
Mhm.
distributor. Again, I'm working close with them so I can know, hey, what's coming in fresh, or what's going to be fresh towards the end of the week that might not be on my list now, or where are you ordering something new that nobody has tried before.
Right.
Like I'll just keep it fresh. Like as long as the oyster is fresh, that's going to give you a whole new outlook and experience on an oyster. And it's my job as the oyster shucker to make your make every experience, let alone your first oyster experience, the best experience. Because all it takes is one bad experience to shut it down forever. Like if you have a bad oyster at a raw bar, oh, that oyster made me sick. I'll never eat an oyster again,
Right.
right? And it takes a lot for you to step back up to the plate to say, you know what, I'll try. So I have to combat a lot of those conversations and kind of sweet talk you back into the oyster lifestyle. Just give me a chance. I can change your world.
Do you dress your oysters at all? Put cocktail sauce or lemon?
So I always tell folks, especially if they've never had that particular type of oyster,
Mhm.
I'm like, try it by itself
Mhm.
because you want to taste what the actual oyster tastes like. So if you do come across a bad oyster, no, not to swallow, first of all, but no, this doesn't taste like, you know, a fresh
Right.
oyster. So I tell everybody, if you haven't had that particular type of oyster, just try it by itself first, and then you can dress it up if you choose to.
Right.
It's some like if you really like oysters are like wine. I like to let it sit on the palate a little bit, dance on my tongue a little bit, little one step, two step, um, and then chew it up, not just swallow the oyster. Um, Take in all the flavors. It's like wine. You'll get something on the front end, you'll get some on the back end. You'll resting notes and everything. Like so, it all depends on the oyster. If I'm putting something on or not. I'm not a big fan of like sweet, like river oysters. Basically, some river oysters I can do because that mineral takes over the
Mm.
oyster. But other like if it's like a lot of fresh water or a big ring that we've had,
Mhm.
I can't do really bland oysters. Those I'm gonna use to cook,
Okay.
like grillers or something. But so that's the other thing about being close with your distributor and just paying attention to nature because you can kind of talk out flavors with people and they can kind of like, oh yeah, I taste that. So you just gotta be aware of all that.
Yeah. So it's more than
I
just
hope
picking
that
up
answers your
it's more
question.
than just picking up a bushel of oysters from your distributor or the farm. It's like having that conversation with them, like what are the water conditions? What's been going on with the oysters? What can we expect it to taste like? And then being able to talk about it.
For me, it is. I can only speak for myself. So for me, it is. I want to know, and that's the beauty of social media.
Mhm.
You can once you start shucking oysters and tagging oyster farmers in your pictures. They care that you care.
Right.
And that's a biggie. The oysters spend 18 months to 2 years in the water, and these are the babies of the oyster farmers.
Right.
So the oyster farmers don't want to see their oysters go to a raw bar and then 3.5 seconds go from this beautiful oyster to this mangled up oyster,
Right.
just like that, just because the oyster shucker didn't care,
Yeah.
or they don't care about the backstory or the process that led up to this oyster coming to them.
Right.
So it's all about the experience. I feel like I'm talking myself way up right now, and I'm absolutely not lying.
Funny. No, you're doing a great job. So I saw on your Instagram, speaking of Instagram, that you had a $10 oyster. Like usually oysters are like about $1, right? When you go to a restaurant.
Right.
What makes a $10
Or
oyster?
three.
Or three.
So it was absolutely positively clickbait.
No.
That's what we call clickbait. You clicked on it, so the bait worked. But here's it is. So here's what it was. This oyster, I don't really pay. I try to keep, because like if you pay, let's say if I pay $1 to $1.50 for the oyster, I've got to charge like I'm trying to think of a Ti word, Ti the rapper for everybody. One of those big words, but like so that's why I choose like good priced oysters with a good quality oyster.
Mm-hmm.
Just so the profit margin. So I can just imagine what rawbars were charging for that oyster. So that's why I said a $10 oyster.
Okay.
And I plan on doing the video. But like, you know what I mean? Like it was an expensive oyster that I got because honestly my wife wanted, she likes what she likes, and I'm in a predicament where I can buy them. So I'm like, all right, cool. But it would have been an expensive oyster for like the average Joe,
Yeah, for sure. I like that you're catering to your wife. You get
Somebody
props.
got to do it. Let
You
it be
got
her husband.
props. Very cool. So I also saw that you worked at Rappahannock Oyster Bar, and my experience with Rappahannock oysters is actually I've done some events with their farmers back in the day. So I didn't think I realized that they had a bar. Have you been out to the farm?
I have not been out to Marijuana, the farm, none of that. I know, but it seemed like every time they were taking trips, I had some baby stuff to do. I was like, I got to be a parent. I can't go with y'all and have fun and get intoxicated and
Yeah,
have
fair
fun.
enough.
Yeah, I got to be a husband and a father. So y'all go do it. I'll see the pictures on Instagram.
Fair enough. Just different seasons of life.
Yeah, no doubt. So what brought me to Rappahannock was so I'm an Army veteran, and I got deployed to Afghanistan, and when I came back home, I basically wanted to do something I enjoyed instead of just doing a job. So boom, oysters. So I started looking for oyster jobs, and Rappahannock was hiring. I came stage. That was one of the hardest shucking mornings I ever shucked, and they hired me. And of course, I knew how to shuck. But yeah, they hired me, and I stayed at Rappahannock for a few years. And every now and then, they'll still hire me to do an event or something. So I love Rappahannock and love their oysters.
Very cool. You've shucked for presidents, I read. That's pretty amazing. Could you tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, for sure. So being the DC oyster shucker, the Oyster Ninja, um, people care that I care, and despite my introverted tendencies, I try and make connections. I don't just work with somebody, or I don't just, it's not a one off. So like if I introduce myself, I'm gonna like introduce myself, hey, I'm Gardner. Um and then I'll just ask you, like, I'll ask you about your life. Like if you're on the podcast.
Right.
I honestly want to know about you. Um so anyway, making those connections, like people just know, and of course with Instagram, yeah, that's a good dude, and he can shuck a daggone good oyster. So anyway, it was Rake's Progress. Chef Opie Crocs. I'm probably messing up his last name, but he was a chef there. And of course, he came from Woodbury. Is it Woodbury Kitchen in Baltimore?
Okay. I'm not sure.
But anyway, that's under Chef Spike. But anyway, they were having these special guests, and they needed a special shucker, and I was that special shucker, and it was for First Lady Michelle Obama. It was her birthday, and President Obama was there, and they had dinner and they had oysters, and I was the oyster shucker, and it was a great experience that goes down. Get to see the presidents while shucking oysters, so it was cool.
That is very, very cool. Did you get to chat with either one of them, or were they being served the oysters elsewhere?
So yeah, they were being served oysters elsewhere. The one part about the event that I still kind of, not to say regret, because you don't want to move too fast around Secret Service. But it's like everybody was taking pictures. The chef and his staff was taking pictures, and I'm just over in the rawbar with my dirty apron on, with my dirty oyster gloves. I don't fit in this picture. I don't fit in, and I didn't take a. Everybody else took a picture. I was definitely not in the picture. I think I remember getting a wave. Hey, Oyster Ninja, but that's, I got a wave maybe, but that's about it. I wish I was in the picture. It would have went a lot further.
Yeah, I think that's a life lesson. Get in the picture even if you're dirty, because then it
Yeah,
would have been more memorable. Remember the oyster shucker got in, dirty apron and all?
exactly. But here's the other thing. The other this is my mantra, I guess. But I'm like, let other people tell you no. Don't cancel yourself out. But if you cancel yourself out, you don't even give yourself a chance.
Right.
So now I'll come up, because I don't know if you saw from the Instagram, but I do like t-shirts and stuff.
Yes.
I'm like, well, you know what? This might not sell. You know what? Let them not buy it first, and then I'll take it down.
Yeah.
You never know who you're speaking to.
That's right.
That's all I'm gonna say.
I like that. Now, have you sold t-shirts?
I've sold some t-shirts. I've sold some t-shirts. I think it would be a lot easier to sell t-shirts. Like if things were a little open up, because then I can market to like the beer festivals and the food festivals and oyster festivals. Right. But now it's just my following and whoever they tag along.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I'm not complaining. A sale is a sale.
That's right.
But I think it would be more successful, if things were a little bit more open up.
Yeah. How did you start your own oyster shucking business?
So here's the thing. Like I said, I've always worked hard, and I don't mind working hard. But I would prefer to work hard for myself compared to someone else.
Yeah.
So let me put in the legwork to build something magnificent for myself. So that's where it came from. Like, I'm doing all these oyster events for other people. They're loving me. They're loving the experience. The people who are coming to me are loving the experience. And again, like I said, I've done events when I was on the Eastern Shore with my dad. So basically, from the things I learned in DC, and of course in the past, I just was like, you know what, I can do this myself.
Yeah.
The other stuff is just small stuff, as far as on the business side, but like, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to invest in myself, and I'm ready to jump off the cliff and try this thing. If I fall, I fall. Boom, I can get a job. I can get another job. But let's hope, I don't fall.
Right.
And it's been going pretty good.
I like that. It kind of goes with let them tell you no, right? Let's see if it works.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I just kind of baby stepped into it, and so here's a fun thing. I was talking about this as if I was already doing it to potential customers. So basically, I would meet people. It's like, hey, oh, you like wine? Yeah, I have an oyster business, but at this time, I really didn't have an oyster business. But I was like, yeah. So what I can do, I can come to your house and I can do an oyster and wine pairing. We can pair oysters and wine. You can get a group of your friends together, and who doesn't like having a group of friends together, drinking wine, eating oysters, maybe some caviar, doing a daggone thing.
Right.
So basically, I just sold the experience, and it worked. So yeah, here we are.
How long ago was
spoken
that?
into existence. This was around 2015.
Okay, so you've been doing this for a little while.
A little bit, yeah.
How did you come up with the name of your business?
SS Shucking?
Yes.
So the name of my dad's business was Sam Shucking Service.
Okay.
Now, when I moved to DC and started doing small events, I was still using Sam Shucking Service.
Okay.
But he was like, Gardner, you're doing more things with this oyster thing that I've ever seen anybody else do with it. You need to make it your own. I was like, sounds like you're firing me is what you're doing. You're kicking me out of Sam Shucking business is what it sounds like. But it's all good. So I just cut it short. Instead of Sam Shucking Service, I just said SS Shucking.
And it makes it sound like a boat.
Exactly. It was meant to be.
It was. That's what I thought it was at first. And then you said earlier in the show that it was Sam the Oyster Man. And I was like, oh, yeah. I bet that's what the SS is from. That's fascinating.
Yep.
It works out on so many levels.
It's so many levels. It's deep.
Yes.
It's deep.
So do you recycle all your oyster shells?
I don't recycle all the oyster shells. I recycle most of the oyster shells. And, it's got to be an easier way to do this. But like even right now, I have a bunch of oyster shells that are sitting on the side of my house that I need to, drop off to but like I said, with COVID and things being shut down, it's just being, made things a little bit more difficult.
Right.
So, but slowly and surely, I'll drop some off to a site, and then by the next time I'll have 2 or 3 more bushels, so. So majority of the time I do. If I'm doing an event somewhere far out, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Yeah, fair enough. So for our listeners, oyster recycling is what it sounds like. You take the spent oyster shell that no longer has the meat in it, and you actually it gets piled up and aged for a certain amount of time, and then eventually it will go back out into the water, and it's the best substrate for baby oysters to settle on. That's like their preferred place to live is on other oyster shells. So it's pretty important. It's also a great source of calcium carbonate, which is also important in the water column. So oyster recycling has become a really great way to kind of bring it all back full circle. And again, at Oyster Recovery Partnership, they had an oyster recycling program, and I went out a couple times and ran the route, and it's really cool. Like you get to see all the back doors of the restaurants and like talk to people and stuff, but oh my goodness, it's probably the smelliest thing I've ever done. There's nothing quite like a several day or week old oyster shell. Yeah, it's special. That's a special smell right there.
Yeah, it's definitely real.
But you climbed into oyster shell midden, which is a giant pile of oyster shells. Was it aged? Was it really smelly?
Yeah, no, the space was smelly, but the shells that I climbed were not. They had been sitting for I think I want to say a year and a half, something like that.
Okay.
So that was fun. And again, my regret with that is I didn't climb both hills because that was just one hill. It was another hill above that.
Oh my
gosh. But I'm not the best with heights. Even though I was in the military, the height thing still gets me from time to time. So I just climbed one and brought my little tail down.
There you go. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So one of my questions to ask on the show is, if you were given a blank check for a project, what would you use it for?
That's too easy. I want to do a TV show. I want to get on the big screen. Mm-hmm. I feel like I would be nervous at first, but my personality would come through at the end of the day. And we got so many like brilliant editors, and they can put it together. Just let me do my thing. Let me go out. Let me basically take the Oyster Ninja podcast and make it a TV show.
Cool.
So I want to go out and talk to oyster farmers, talk to kelp farmers, talk to ocean nonprofits. I want to go and get dirty with the folks that are out here getting dirty for the cause, and basically bring light onto what they're doing. So basically putting the Oyster Ninja podcast on the big screen.
I like it. That's a great.
And I'm thinking like maybe Discovery Channel or TLC or whatever those channels are, National Geographic.
Yeah. The big leagues. I like it.
That's what I would do. Yeah.
I like it. What's one of your favorite field story or stories to tell? And I feel like this could get really interesting because you could share a day out on the boat that you love so much, or you could share a day kind of shucking oysters. I'm sure you come across some characters.
So it's crazy because the way my mind works, I want to put everything so everybody can indulge in it. So like I think everything should be a podcast or everything should be a YouTube video. But I've heard some interesting conversations like, as a shucker, you're just kind of there. Like, I don't know if you watched The Butler. But basically you're just in this room and you don't say anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I've heard some interesting conversations that people have while at the bar. I've seen some weird stuff at the bar. So that would be one road to go down.
Yeah.
Another popular story I like to tell is like the first time I got stabbed in the Shucking house on Sugartick Island. I was working in the Shucking house, which is basically how you get your gallons of oysters, or how the stores get pints and quarts of oysters that are in jars.
Somebody has to
But
physically shuck them.
Somebody has to do that. Yeah,
Yep.
it's work. And it's not that many shucking houses that are actually open anymore. I think it might be one left on Sugartick, if that. And I think it's a couple in Crisfield, Maryland. But anyway, that was the first time I stabbed myself, and that's a story by itself. Just sharing conversations with my dad on the boat, like you said, it's a bunch. It's a bunch, and it's hard to pick one. But I think the story that I most feel is when I stabbed myself in the Shucking house.
How did you do that?
So basically, I had been bullied. I'm gonna say it. I wasn't proud. I've been bullied by all these oyster shuckers that can shuck way faster than me, and somehow some of their oysters are getting in my oyster pile. So they're bullying up on the kid. And at that time, I mean, I was like, again, in my early 20s. All these people literally are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I'm sure there was a 90-year-old there. So that's just painting a picture. We're in this small room, like you're standing and oysters in front of you, and it's a shucker right there to your right and to your left. So that's how oysters fall into my pile mysteriously. And you got people singing like hymnals, like church spirituals, and it's a good time. It's good. It's great for the soul. But anyway, I was tired of I'm only shucking maybe. My goal was to make $60. It might not sound a lot, but it was a lot back then. I got paid $10 a bushel. So for every bushel shuck, I got $10. So my goal was to make $60.
So what is a bushel?
A bushel is a whole lot of daggone oysters that I should have been getting paid more than $10.
Right.
That's what it exactly is.
Right. I mean, that's it's like a bucket, right?
It's like a bushel is like, it holds maybe like, depending on oyster size, it can hold from like 150 to like 300 oysters, depending on the size of the oysters.
A couple hundred oysters.
Yes. And you start first thing in the morning. I'm talking like 3:30, 4:30 o'clock in the morning. You're like up and shucking oysters. So yeah, this particular day, I'm feeling myself. I feel like I'm keeping up with the more experienced shuckers, and I go to shuck this oyster. I'm thinking it must have been rotten or something. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, I slide off of the shell or in the shell and right into my hand.
Oh gosh!
And the only thing I can do is pull the knife out and put my hand into a ball and walk out solemnly. Like in church when they throw that finger up and, excuse me, sorry, I gotta go. I'm leaving. Yeah. And I walk outside and I open my hand and it's just red. Like the whole glove, everything is red. I'm talking about like, I thought that I had just killed my hand. Just go and take it off. Like, I don't need it anymore. Just take it. It was bad. It was ugly. I'm like,
That's
my
so
hand will
scary.
never work.
I'm laughing because that sounds terrifying. That's my reaction.
I'm thinking my hand is never going to work the same again. And yeah, so I go clean it off. And of course, I leave. I think I take a couple days off and I'm back at it again. I don't learn my lesson. So yeah, that was my first time. That was my first bad stab.
Yeah, I would imagine cutting yourself is fairly common, particularly when you're learning how to shuck oysters.
Well, it's common even after you learn, honestly. I mean, the shells are sharp and I like to punish myself and wear latex gloves. So it's funny, me and my buddy was joking, was like, I don't know why I feel safe wearing a latex glove when you get maybe 6 oysters in and the latex is already ripped up.
Right.
But I just feel so safe. But if I take off that ripped latex glove and I'm just shucking in my hand, I can't do it. So
just that tiny thin barrier.
Right.
Why don't you use like a thick leather glove?
Who does things safe?
Okay.
I live on the wild side over here. Come on, it's the Oyster Ninja. Come on.
Fair enough. Be a detriment to your ninja status.
Yeah, and it looks good. It looks fun on it looks cool on social media.
There you go.
We do it for the likes.
I do it for the likes. Fun. So at the end of each episode, I like to leave the audience with a conservation ask to go forth and take into the world. Do you have an ask for my audience to take from your episode?
I'm going to ask your audience to eat more oysters. I'm going to ask your audience to eat more oysters so we can recycle more oyster shells. I'm going to ask your audience to, if they eat oysters, especially if they eat at a rawbar, ask your rawbar, are you recycling these oyster shells? Because ... and the Oyster Ninja said so.
That's right. I like that. I want to add to that. Also, maybe ask them where they got their oysters from, because I think knowing where your food comes from is super important.
Oh, for sure. We didn't even talk about that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You want to chat about that for a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
And real quick, if you ask where your oysters are from, also ask when were they harvested. Again, I said earlier, the thing that separates me is the freshness on the oysters. When you get oysters from the Oyster Ninja, they've only been out of the water 2 to 3 days max. Sometimes 4 to 5. But if you go to a raw bar, it can be, let's just say, more than what I said. So ask when the oysters were harvested. Again, it's nothing wrong with them. Oysters can live out the water for up to 3 weeks, as long as they're kept at a good temperature. But for each day they're out of the water, it changes the profile, the taste of that oyster.
Right.
So listen, ask when they were harvested, ask where they were harvested, and of course, recycle oyster shells.
I like it. If listeners want to find you, connect with you, learn more about you and your work with oysters, where's the best place to do so?
So you can follow my mobile raw bar on Instagram at s.s.shucking. Not Sam Shucking, just SS Shucking.
Like
you can listen to the podcast on Apple and Spotify and all of those good platforms. Just search the Oyster Ninja podcast. I'll pop up and pull up on me. Pull up on me if you're in the DMV area. Hit me up.
I like it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I had a lot of fun chatting oysters with you.
Boom, bam, insert outro music. Thank you. I appreciate you for bringing me on your platform. We got to get you on the Oyster Ninja podcast ASAP. No, but you're doing great things, and I love to connect with people who are doing things for the cause.
Thank you.
Hey, one more thing. Do you want to dive more into the ocean and marine biology? Need a little guidance on ocean conservation? Head on over to marinebio.life/resources. We've got book recommendations, job posting pages, conference suggestions, and ocean-friendly products. All recommendations have been personally vetted by me, and I will continue to add to the collection as I come across cool things to share. Head on over to marinebio.life/resources to learn more.
See you over there.
Hey, do you want to help the oceans? Have you considered a career in marine biology, but maybe just aren't sure where to start? Head on over to my website, marinebio.life, and subscribe to my newsletter. When you subscribe, you'll receive a free PDF download where you'll learn the 7 steps to becoming a marine biologist without the degree.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I'd love to hear any insight you've gleaned. Leave a comment in the show notes or send me an email over at marinebio.life. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and of course, share with your friends. If you want more resources for ocean news, including conservation topics and careers, plus personal insight from me that I just don't share anywhere else, join me at marinebio.life and sign up for email updates. Keep after your dreams and making waves in your community. One person can make a difference. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast.